Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of eerie whispers and unseen eyes, where the cold air nips at your skin, and every creak of the floorboards seems to carry a secret. I walk through an old mansion, its windows fogged up, the dampness of the night seeping into the wood. The fog outside thickens, turning everything around me into a blurry, ethereal landscape, as if the house itself is floating in a forgotten space. There's something about places like this, abandoned, yet still very much alive with memories. And something else, something darker. I probably won't sleep after this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, while you're settling in, leave a comment with your location and the time it is where you're watching. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The mansion, a grand but decaying structure, had always fascinated me from the outside. With its ivy-covered walls, cracked stone steps, and windows that seemed to peer back at you. It was the kind of place you'd expect to see in a foggy painting or an old, forgotten photograph. The townsfolk, however, were quick to warn anyone who dared approach. They spoke of a curse, a story as old as the house itself. But I was never one to shy away from a good story or the thrill of uncovering something hidden. As the fog rolled in, I found myself standing at the front door. A heavy wooden thing that creaked eerily as I pushed it open. It was almost as if the house had been waiting for me. I stepped inside, the musty smell of old wood and forgotten things filling my nose. The grand foyer stretched out before me, its high ceilings lost in shadow. The chandelier overhead swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. I took a few steps forward, the sound of my shoes on the old marble floor sharp in the silence. There was something unsettling about it. Something that made every step feel too loud, too noticeable. And then, a soft whisper, so faint, I could have sworn it was the wind. I froze. I wasn't alone. I turned to look, but the room was still. The walls, lined with portraits of long-gone ancestors, seemed to watch me. Their eyes followed my every move, no matter where I went. I moved deeper into the house, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. The faintest sounds of something. Someone just out of sight. I continued through the halls, and it wasn't long before I came to the library. The heavy scent of old paper and leather-bound books filled the air. The shelves were lined with volumes that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. My fingers brushed over the spines of some, the dust settling in tiny clouds around me. And then I heard it again. The whisper. It was louder this time, as if someone was trying to get my attention. I followed the sound, my heart beating louder in my chest, echoing in the otherwise quiet room. The whispers led me to a corner where a small old mirror hung on the wall. It looked out of place, its glass cracked and fogged over, as if it had been untouched for years. I stepped closer, my reflection barely visible in the glass, distorted by the grime and age. But it wasn't my reflection that caught my eye. Behind me, in the faint reflection of the mirror, there was something else, a shadow, tall and thin, lurking just out of sight. My breath caught in my throat. as I spun around. But the room was empty. No one was there. I turned back to the mirror, my pulse quickening. The shadow was gone, but the whispering continued, now rising in intensity. It seemed to come from all around me, filling the room with an eerie chorus. And then, just as I was about to turn and leave, I saw her, a figure in the reflection, a girl, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, her face pale and gaunt, eyes dark and hollow. She stood there, staring at me, her lips moving, though no sound came from her mouth. I took a step back, my heart racing in my chest. She reached out, her hand pressing against the glass, her fingers leaving smudges on the fogged surface. The air in the room grew colder, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The girl's gaze never wavered from mine. I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, as if I was trapped in the mirror, unable to escape. And then, just as quickly as she appeared, the girl vanished. The mirror was once again clear empty. No reflection of her. Just mine, wide-eyed and filled with panic. The whispers died down, leaving me standing alone in the cold, empty library. But I knew, deep down, that I hadn't been alone. There was someone else in that house, watching me, waiting. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home. The mansion, once just an eerie curiosity, had now burrowed deep into my thoughts, like a splinter I couldn't remove. And then, that girl in the mirror. I had to know more. The whispers, the presence there, was something I needed to uncover. I never truly believed in ghosts. Or at least, I didn't think I did. But what happened in that mansion made me question everything. The chill in the air, the sense of being watched, and most disturbingly, the reflection of that girl. It was as if she had been there, waiting for me. I had to find out who she was, why she was there, and what had happened to her. So, I did what anyone in my situation would do. I went back. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. After all, it's not the kind of thing you can explain easily. Ghost stories are one thing, but an experience like mine was different. It left a mark. A feeling that something unfinished was just beyond my reach. I made my way back to the mansion as the sun began to set, the light fading into the heavy fog that always seemed to linger around it. It wasn't until I reached the front door that I realized I'd never really looked at it during the day. The door was massive, carved with intricate designs, almost as if it were telling a story of its own. But this time, as I approached, I saw something that I hadn't before. The door wasn't just old. It was alive, almost pulsing with energy. My hand hovered over the knob. But then, I hesitated. I'd never really been afraid of places like this before. But something about today felt different. The air around me thickened, and I could almost hear my heartbeat drumming in my ears. Still, I pushed through the doubt, turning the knob and stepping inside. The house was just as it had been the night before, still quiet and unnervingly cold. But now, it felt more oppressive, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Every sound I made, every footstep I took, seemed amplified. It was as though the mansion was waiting for something or someone. I retraced my steps from the night before, slowly and cautiously, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I approached the library. The mirror. That's where I had seen her. The girl. When I reached the corner of the room, I found myself staring at the same cracked mirror hanging on the wall. I ran my fingers over the surface, wiping away the grime, but the reflection it offered was still fuzzy. There was no sign of the girl, no trace of the ghostly presence that had haunted me. But then, as I stood there, something changed. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch, creeping along the floor, moving towards the mirror. My heart pounded, and I could hear the whispers again, low and faint, but unmistakable. I turned, expecting to see someone behind me, but the room was empty. I looked back at the mirror, and there, standing in the reflection, was the girl. This time, she wasn't just a vague shadow or a fleeting image. She was clear, her pale face, her wide, dark eyes fixed on mine. She was closer than before, as if she had stepped out of the mirror and into the room. Her lips moved, but no sound came from her mouth. And then, slowly, she began to reach out, her fingers stretching towards me. My pulse quickened, my breath shallow. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. The girl's hand touched the glass, and as she did, the entire room seemed to pulse with an energy I could feel in my bones. The air was heavy, and I could almost hear the faintest sound of chains rattling, distant yet unmistakable. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a haunting. It was a warning. I had to get out. But as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut, trapping me in the room. The whispers grew louder, filling my head, drowning out my thoughts. I tried to push against the door, but it wouldn't budge. My mind raced. My breath quickened. There was no way out. Not unless I faced what was in the room with me. I turned back to the mirror, my heart racing in my chest. The girl was still there, her eyes locked on mine, her hand now pressed against the glass. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, I saw the faintest outline of something else, something dark, twisting, and monstrous. A shadow that seemed to reach out of the mirror, crawling towards me. In that moment, I knew I was no longer alone. The mansion had claimed me. The air grew colder, and every breath I took seemed to fill my lungs with the weight of the house itself. The walls, once so distant and forgotten, now felt close, pressing in on me from every side. I could hear the whispers again, louder this time, like a chorus rising from the very floorboards. The girl, her reflection, her gaze lingered in my mind. But now, there was something else, something darker, that seemed to emerge from the shadows. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Should I try to leave, or should I confront what was haunting me, face to face? The mirror in front of me seemed to pull me in, drawing me closer with every passing second. But as I stepped forward, I realized something I hadn't noticed before. The room around me, though dim, began to twist. The bookshelves that lined the walls, once solid and unmoving, now seemed to ripple like water. The shadows stretched longer, more sinister, their edges curling and flickering like flames in the wind. And then the girl moved, slowly, deliberately. At first, it was a faint shift in her posture. But then, I saw it. She was stepping out of the mirror, one foot crossing the boundary, the edges of her figure blurring with the fog around her. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. The room felt alive, the atmosphere thick with a force I couldn't understand. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine, and a cold breeze swept through the room. I gasped, taking a step back, but the girl kept coming, her movements fluid, almost graceful. It was as if she had been waiting for me, as if everything had led to this moment. I had no idea who she was or why she was here. But in that instant, I knew one thing for certain: she wanted something. My mind raced as I looked for a way out. The door, still firmly shut, offered no hope. There was only the mirror. And the girl, now only inches away. She reached for me, her icy hand stretching towards my face, and before I could even react, she touched me. Her touch was cold, far colder than anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just the temperature. It was as if her hand burned through me, searing into my very soul. My vision blurred, and I could hear my heartbeat. Louder now, faster. The girl's face twisted, her expression changing from curiosity to something darker, more sinister. Her lips moved, though still no sound emerged. And then I heard it. Not from her lips, but from somewhere deep inside the walls. As if the entire mansion was speaking. Believe now, before it's too late. The words sent a chill down my spine. And for the first time, I truly understood the weight of what I was experiencing. The mansion wasn't just haunted by ghosts. It was alive, feeding off the fear, the memories, the regrets of those who had come before me. The spirits within the house were not just lingering, they were imprisoned, bound by the mansion itself, their sorrow and pain echoing through the years. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape. But the girl, her eyes fixed on me, blocked my way. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. She whispered again, the words now cutting through the silence like a blade. Stay with me. And in that moment, I felt a wave of sadness, an overwhelming grief that seemed to come from the very walls around me. It wasn't her sadness, though, no. It was something older, something buried deep within the house itself. The mansion had been built on sorrow, on the backs of those who had once lived there. And it had grown powerful over time. The spirits, the whispers, they were part of its foundation, part of its very soul. The girl stepped forward, and this time, there was no mistaking the finality in her motion. Her hand reached for my chest, her fingers cold as they brushed over my skin. I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever was about to happen. But just as her fingers made contact, the room seemed to collapse around me. The darkness overwhelmed everything. The whispers, the shadows, the girl. All of it swallowed me whole. I fell into the void, tumbling through an endless, suffocating dark that seemed to stretch on forever. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. It felt like I was being pulled deeper into the house, into its very core. The walls, the floors. Everything around me felt like it was shifting, changing, moving as though it had a life of its own. And then there was silence. I opened my eyes, unsure of where I was. unsure of what had happened. The mansion, the girl, the cold, it was all gone, replaced by a soft, oppressive silence. The mirror was gone, the walls, the rooms, all of it had vanished, leaving only the emptiness. It wasn't just physical emptiness. It was a void that reached into my mind, swallowing my thoughts, my memories. I could still hear the faint echoes of the whispers, but they were distant now, as if they were coming from another world. I stood there, confused, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. The girl, she was gone. The house gone. But I could still feel it, the presence, the energy that had been inside that place. It was still with me, lingering in the air around me. The realization hit me then. It wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a ghost story. The mansion had never been real. Not in the way I had thought. It was a manifestation of something deeper, something buried within me, something I had brought with me. I had never truly left. The house, the girl, the cold, they were part of me now. I could feel them in my bones, in the way my heart raced whenever I closed my eyes. And no matter how far I ran, no matter where I went, I knew one thing for certain: I would never truly escape it. The mansion would always be there, in the back of my mind, waiting. It had been days since I left the mansion behind, or at least I thought I had. The image of that girl, her haunting gaze, had followed me like a shadow. No matter where I went, I could feel her presence, as if she was still standing just behind me, waiting for me to turn around. It was maddening. I had tried to push it out of my mind, but the more I tried, the more persistent the memories became. The mansion, the house that wasn't real, had left a mark on me, one that I couldn't shake. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it. Who would believe me? I barely believed it myself. It seemed too absurd, too unreal. A haunted mansion that didn't even exist in the physical world. A girl who wasn't a ghost but something else entirely. How could I explain that? How could I tell someone that I had walked into a house and found myself trapped in its memories, unable to leave, even when I was physically miles away? But the truth was, the more I tried to ignore it, the more I began to question my own sanity. I found myself going back to the same thoughts, the same feelings, over and over again. Every dark corner of my room seemed to whisper her name. Every reflection in the mirror was a chance for her to show up again. And then, one night, as I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, I heard it again, a soft whisper, too faint to understand, but unmistakable in its tone. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest, and looked around the room. The darkness was thick, the air heavy, like the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing down on me. I was alone. I had to be. But as I glanced toward the corner of the room, I saw it a shadow, just out of place, moving. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a trick of the light. It was too real, too solid. I stood up, slowly, my legs trembling as I approached the corner. The shadow was still there, barely noticeable, but there all the same, as if it was waiting for me. It wasn't just any shadow, it had shape, form. It moved, just as the girl had moved in the mirror, fluid and unnatural. And then I saw her. She was standing there. Not in the mirror this time, but in the corner of my room, staring at me with those same hollow eyes. The girl from the mansion. Her face was pale, her lips twisted in that eerie, knowing smile. I froze. My body refused to move. My throat felt tight, as if the very air had turned to stone. She took a step toward me, her bare feet barely making a sound on the floor. The silence in the room grew oppressive, thick with tension. "Why are you still here?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes, those empty, endless eyes, spoke for her. There was no fear in them, only a quiet, unsettling patience. It was as if she had been waiting for me, waiting for this moment. And now that it had arrived, she wasn't going anywhere. I backed away, my hands trembling as I reached for the door. I had to get out. I had to leave. But as I turned the doorknob, the room around me seemed to close in, the walls shifting, narrowing, until the door wouldn't budge. Panic rose in my chest, and I slammed my shoulder against it. But it was useless. The girl was closer now, standing just inches away, her presence suffocating. Her hand reached out, the cold air of her touch brushing against my face, sending a shiver down my spine. She didn't speak, but the message was clear. There was no escape. "Please let me go," I begged, my voice cracking. She didn't respond. She never did. But her hand, cold and trembling, rested gently on my chest. I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever was about to happen. But just as her fingers made contact, the room seemed to collapse around me. The darkness overwhelmed everything, the whispers, the shadows, the girl. All of it swallowed me whole. I fell into the void, tumbling through an endless, suffocating dark that seemed to stretch on forever. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. It felt like I was being pulled deeper into the house, into its very core. The walls, the floors, everything around me felt like it was shifting, changing, moving as though it had a life of its own. And then there was silence. I opened my eyes, unsure of where I was, unsure of what had happened. The mansion, the girl, the cold, it was all gone, replaced by a soft, oppressive silence. The mirror was gone, the walls, the rooms, all of it had vanished, leaving only the emptiness. It wasn't just physical emptiness, it was a void that reached into my mind, swallowing my thoughts, my memories. I could still hear the faint echoes of the whispers, but they were distant now, as if they were coming from another world. I stood there, confused, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. The girl, she was gone, the house gone, but I could still feel it, the presence, the energy that had been inside that place. It was still with me, lingering in the air around me. The realization hit me then. It wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a ghost story. The mansion had never been real, not in the way I had thought. It was a manifestation of something deeper, something buried within me, something I had brought with me. I had never truly left. The house, the girl, the cold, they were part of me now. I could feel them in my bones, in the way my heart raced whenever I closed my eyes. And no matter how far I ran, no matter where I went, I knew one thing for certain: I would never truly escape it. The mansion would always be there, in the back of my mind, waiting. It didn't take long before I realized that the mansion wasn't the only thing I couldn't escape. The house, the girl, the whispers, they had all become part of me, seeping into my daily life. It wasn't just at night, in the dark corners of my room, that I felt their presence. No, they had followed me into the waking world, attaching themselves to my every thought, my every movement. At first, I tried to ignore it. I forced myself to go through the motions, work, socializing, even sleep, but nothing worked. No matter where I went, no matter what I did, I could feel them there, lurking just beyond the edge of my perception. I would be walking down the street, and suddenly, a flicker of movement would catch my eye, a shadow passing behind me, a figure just out of place. But when I turned around, there would be nothing. I would sit at a cafe, enjoying a cup of coffee, and the whispers would begin again, faint and distant, as if someone was speaking just out of reach. I would glance around, heart racing, but no one was there. It was always just a shadow, a whisper, a fleeting moment that would vanish as soon as I acknowledged it. I became paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, constantly listening for something, anything, that might indicate I wasn't alone. It was exhausting, but one night, it all came to a head. It was the middle of the week, a Tuesday, and I had just returned home after a long day. The house felt different somehow, but I couldn't put my finger on why. It was like the air itself had thickened, as if the space around me had become more oppressive, more suffocating. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew something had changed. The house seemed to breathe. I paused, standing in the entryway, my senses on high alert. I could hear it, a soft creaking sound coming from somewhere deep within the house. It was subtle, but there, nonetheless. At first, I thought it might just be the house settling, but there was something wrong about it. The sound seemed to be deliberate, purposeful. It was as if something or someone was moving through the walls. I took a step forward, my feet heavy with dread. I had been here before. I had felt this before. The weight of unseen eyes, the pressure building with every step I took. It was the same sensation I had experienced in the mansion. The same eerie awareness that I was not alone. But this time, there was something else, something new. I crept down the hallway, toward the living room, where the sound seemed to be coming from. The air grew colder with every step. My breath, visible in the dim light, fogged the air in front of me. It was like the house itself was alive, breathing in time with me, drawing me deeper into its embrace. I reached the door to the living room, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. But before I could touch it, the door swung open on its own, the creaking sound growing louder, more insistent. The room inside was dark, the only light coming from the flickering glow of a single lamp in the corner. But there, standing in the middle of the room, was the girl. She was no longer just a reflection, no longer just a shadow in the mirror. She was real now, fully formed, standing in front of me as if she had always been there, waiting for me to return. Her pale face was twisted in a strange, unreadable expression, her eyes hollow, yet filled with an intensity that I couldn't escape. I froze. The room felt smaller, more suffocating. as if the walls were closing in on me, leaving no room to escape. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. She didn't speak. Of course, she never did. But her eyes, those endless, empty eyes, locked onto mine, and I could feel her gaze pierce through me. Her presence was overwhelming, like a storm building just beneath the surface of the world. It wasn't just her this time. The house itself seemed to be breathing with her, the walls vibrating in unison with her stillness. I took a step back, my legs shaking, but she didn't move. She simply stood there, watching me, waiting. There was something maddening about it, something that made me feel as if I were trapped, unable to break free from her gaze. The whispers returned then, rising from the walls, from the very air around me. They were soft at first, just a murmur, but soon they grew louder, more insistent, until the room was filled with the voices of 1,000 forgotten souls, each one crying out in pain, in torment. It was as if the house itself was alive, its every corner filled with the memories of those who had passed through its doors, their voices blending into a cacophony of sorrow. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the noise, but it only grew louder. The girl's presence grew stronger, pressing in on me, suffocating me. I could feel her hand, cold and trembling, on my chest once again. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking with desperation. "Please, let me go." And for the first time, I thought I heard a response, faint, distant, but unmistakable. "Stay with me." The words echoed through my mind, wrapping around me like chains. The girl wasn't just a ghost. She wasn't just a spirit. She was the mansion, and the mansion was her. The house had never been just a place. It was a living thing, feeding on those who entered, feeding on their memories, their regrets. And it had chosen me. I opened my eyes, and there, in front of me, stood the girl, no longer a shadow, no longer a reflection. She was real now, and as I looked into her eyes, I knew, with a certainty I could not explain, that I was no longer the same person who had walked into that mansion all those days ago. I had become part of it. The whispers grew louder, consuming everything. There was no escape. The house had won. The next few days were a blur. Or maybe I was just too numb to remember them clearly. I went through the motions: work, meals, sleep, but I was no longer truly living. I felt disconnected, like I was watching my own life unfold from a distance, unable to feel anything but the weight of that girl's presence and the suffocating grasp of the mansion that still clung to me. It was like the walls of the house had wrapped themselves around my mind, trapping me in a cycle I couldn't escape. At times, I thought I heard the whispers again, faint and distant, calling to me from the corners of the world, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just figments of my imagination. The house had become a part of me, and with it, the girl. I could feel her everywhere, her cold breath on the back of my neck, her eyes following me in every mirror, every reflection. She was always there, just out of sight, waiting. I had to do something. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine, that I wasn't losing my mind. I had to confront it, confront her, and put an end to whatever this was before it consumed me completely. I drove to the town where the mansion stood, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I was looking for answers, or maybe I was just searching for something to explain the madness that had taken over my life. The mansion was still there, just as I remembered it, looming in the distance like a dark cloud in the midst of a forgotten world. But this time, as I stood in front of the massive, decaying structure, I felt no fear. There was no more dread, no more unease. I had already crossed that line. And now, all that was left was the truth. I stepped inside. The door creaked as it swung open. The same eerie sound I had heard that first night. The air inside was heavy, thick with the weight of history, of memories that had been buried long ago. The silence was almost unbearable, broken only by the soft hum of my own breath. But something was different this time. The mansion no longer felt cold. It felt alive, as if it had been waiting for me, calling me back. I walked through the foyer, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch me, their eyes following my every move. The whispers, too, had returned. Soft at first, but growing louder with each step I took. They were no longer just a distant murmur. Now, they were clear, sharp, as if they were coming from the very walls themselves. I walked deeper into the house, drawn by an unseen force, until I reached the library. The door was ajar, just as it had been the first time I entered this place. The mirror, too, was still there, hanging on the wall, just as I remembered it. But now, it wasn't just a reflection. It was a window, a portal to something darker, something far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The girl stood in front of it, waiting for me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and hollow, but there was something different about her now. She wasn't the same girl I had seen before. She was more present, more real. Her hand reached out to me, her fingers trembling with an intensity I had never felt before. "You came back," she whispered, her voice soft but laced with something dangerous. "You never left." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I felt as if my body had turned to stone, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared into her eyes. She was no longer just a shadow in the mirror. She was the mansion, and the mansion was her. She had been here all along, waiting for me to return, waiting for me to accept what I had become. "You're part of me now," she said, her voice growing stronger, more insistent. "You always were." The room seemed to spin, the walls closing in on me as I stood frozen in place. The girl's smile grew wider, more twisted, as the whispers grew louder, until they were deafening. I could hear them in my head now, all around me. The voices of the spirits trapped in this place, all calling to me, all demanding something I couldn't give. I tried to turn away, but the house wouldn't let me. The door slammed shut behind me, and I felt the pressure in the air intensify, crushing me from all sides. The girl stepped forward, her cold hand reaching for my chest, her fingers brushing against my skin like ice. "You can never leave," she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet, terrible certainty. "You're mine now." I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. I didn't have the will to resist. The mansion had taken me, It had claimed me, body and soul, and there was no escaping it. The last thing I heard was the sound of the whispers rising in a deafening crescendo, the voices of the house wrapping around me like a suffocating embrace. And then there was nothing. Silence. I awoke in my own bed. Or at least, I thought I did. But something was wrong. The room around me was unfamiliar. The walls strange and unfamiliar. I could feel the presence of the house, the girl, pressing down on me, filling every corner of my mind. And then I saw her again. The girl stood at the foot of my bed, her hollow eyes fixed on me, a knowing smile on her lips. "You never left," she whispered, and I knew then that I never would. The days blurred together. Time no longer had any meaning. My reality had shifted in ways I couldn't explain, slipping through my fingers like sand. At first, I thought I had somehow escaped the mansion, that I had made it out, that I had managed to outrun whatever it was that had haunted me. But with each passing moment, I realized that nothing had truly changed. The girl was still there, still in my mind, still watching me from the edges of my vision. Her presence, a constant weight that pressed down on my every thought. I tried to go about my life, tried to act as though everything was normal, as though I hadn't been dragged into that mansion. That house that wasn't just a place but a living, breathing nightmare. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape it. The whispers, the girl, the suffocating darkness that clung to me, it was all still there, just below the surface, waiting for me to acknowledge it. And one night, I couldn't ignore it any longer. It started like any other night. I was lying in bed, staring up at the ceiling, the familiar hum of silence surrounding me. But then, it happened. The room grew colder. The shadows in the corners of my room seemed to shift and move, as though they had a life of their own. I could hear the faintest whispers, too soft at first to make out, but unmistakable in their urgency. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my heart began to race. I wasn't alone. I sat up in bed, my breath shallow and quick, scanning the room for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. The room was dark and still, just as it should have been. Yet, I could feel it, the presence. The mansion's weight, the girl's eyes on me, the air thick with unspoken words. I had to face it. There was no running from it anymore. I got out of bed, my feet heavy against the floor, as I slowly walked toward the mirror. I wasn't sure why, but it felt like the right thing to do. As I stood in front of it, I could feel my reflection staring back at me. And yet, it didn't feel like my reflection. There was something wrong with it. Something off about the way my image seemed to flicker in the dim light. And then, just as I had expected, the girl appeared. Her figure materialized in the reflection, her hollow eyes locking onto mine. She was still the same pale, ghostly, her face a twisted mask of both sorrow and malice. But this time, there was something different about her. Her smile, once twisted, was now filled with a terrible, knowing calm. She didn't move. She didn't have to. Her presence filled the room, as if she was standing right next to me. "You're here," she whispered, her voice soft and haunting. The words seemed to seep into my very soul, wrapping around me like chains. I could feel the pull of her gaze, the suffocating weight of her presence. And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't escape. Not this time. Not ever. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered back, my voice shaking. Her smile widened, her eyes never leaving mine. She reached out, her hand coming through the glass, cold and trembling, yet impossibly solid. Her fingers brushed against my cheek, the chill of her touch seeping deep into my skin, into my very bones. "You're mine," she said, the words carrying an eerie finality. "You always were." The world around me seemed to distort, the room spinning, the walls closing in. I stumbled backward, trying to pull away, but it was as if I were trapped in a dream I couldn't wake from. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that seemed to rise from the very depths of the earth, all of them speaking at once, drowning out my thoughts, my screams. And then I saw it. In the reflection, the mansion appeared behind the girl, its towering, decaying structure looming in the background. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in time with the whispers. The house was alive, watching me, waiting for me. I could feel its hunger, its need to consume, to trap me in its endless cycle of sorrow and darkness. The girl's gaze never wavered. She watched me with an intensity that pierced through me, as if she was seeing straight into my soul. She was the mansion. She was its heart, its essence, its keeper. And now, she had claimed me. "You're part of it now," she whispered. "You'll never escape." I wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from this nightmare. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was paralyzed, trapped in the reflection, unable to escape the pull of the house, of the girl. And then the world went black. I awoke in my own bed. But I wasn't alone. The girl was there, sitting at the foot of my bed, her eyes fixed on me. She was no longer just a ghost, no longer just a figment of my imagination. She was real, and I was hers. "You never left," she whispered again, her voice soft but filled with the weight of 1,000 years of sorrow. And I knew then, with an awful certainty, that I never would. The mansion had claimed me, body and soul. There was no escape. The weight of the girl's presence in the room was suffocating. I could feel her eyes on me, her gaze never wavering, as if she were watching me for every breath I took. It wasn't just her anymore. It was the mansion itself, the air around me, the walls, the shadows. All of it was alive, pressing in, wrapping around me like a cage. It wasn't a house I'd entered anymore. It was a part of me, a nightmare that had seeped into my soul. I tried to move, to speak, to do anything to break the hold she had on me, but my body refused to respond. I was trapped. She was in my mind, in my blood, in my every thought. There was no escape. "You can't run from it," she whispered, her voice sweet and soothing, but with an underlying edge that sent shivers down my spine. "You can't hide from me anymore." Her words were a simple truth. There was no hiding, no fleeing. She had become a part of me, and the mansion was in my blood now. I could feel it in my bones, the pulse of the house beneath my skin, the whisper of the spirits that had once lived there, still trapped in the walls, in the floors, in the very foundation of the place. They were all with me, all part of this endless cycle of torment. "You're part of the house now," the girl said, as though she could read my mind. "You'll never leave. You'll never be free." Her hand reached out toward me, the coldness of her touch freezing my chest as she laid her fingers on my skin. A jolt of icy energy shot through me, and for a brief moment, everything around me seemed to shift. The room, the house, the girl, all of it, blurred into a swirling void. And then I was standing in a place I didn't recognize. It was the mansion, but not as I remembered it. The walls were crumbling, the floors cracked, the air heavy with dust and decay. But it was alive. I could feel it pulsing, thrumming with energy, as though the house itself was breathing, watching me. The girl stood beside me, her form flickering like a shadow in the dim light. But her eyes, those empty, hollow eyes, remained fixed on me. "You thought you could leave," she said, her voice a low, melodic whisper. "But this place never lets go. It's in you now, and it always will be." I tried to scream, but no sound came. My mouth moved, but the words were trapped inside me. The girl's smile widened, her expression twisted into something darker, something that felt all too familiar. "This is where you belong," she whispered, her breath cold against my ear. "This is your home now." The walls of the house seemed to press in on me, the weight of the air growing unbearable. The house wasn't just a building anymore. It was an entity, a living thing that fed on the fear and sorrow of those who entered it. I could feel it, the hunger of the mansion, its need to consume. And now, I was a part of it. I was trapped in its endless cycle of suffering, doomed to wander its decaying halls for eternity. "You will never leave," she said again, her voice echoing in the silence. "This is your fate." And then, the world around me seemed to collapse, the house crumbling into dust as the girl's form faded into the shadows. The air grew still, and I was left alone in the darkness, surrounded by the silence of a house that had consumed everything. But even in the silence, I could still feel her. She was inside me now, a part of me, and there was no escaping her, no escaping the mansion. I awoke again, but this time, I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't anywhere familiar. I was standing in the foyer of the mansion, the door to the outside world, just beyond my reach. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper. The floor creaked beneath my feet, and the air was thick with dust and decay. The mansion had become my world, and there was no escaping it. I turned, and there she was, again the girl. She stood at the foot of the stairs, her eyes fixed on me, her smile a twisted reflection of the one I had seen so many times before. "You can't leave," she said softly, her voice a gentle caress. "You're mine now." I reached for the door, desperate to escape, but it wouldn't open. I pulled harder, but the door remained firm, as though it were made of stone. The mansion had claimed me, body and soul, and there was no escape. "You belong to me now," the girl whispered again, her voice filling the space around me. "You always will." I stood there, my heart racing, trapped in a place I couldn't escape. The mansion, the girl, they were part of me now, and I was part of them. There was no freedom, no escape. Just the endless, suffocating embrace of the house, watching, waiting, feeding on my fear. And I knew, deep down, that I would never leave. The mansion had claimed me. It always would. Days turned into weeks, or at least it felt that way. Time no longer held any meaning. The mansion's grip on me tightened with every passing moment, and I could feel it in every fiber of my being. The walls of this place were no longer just stone and wood. They were alive, pulsating with an energy I couldn't comprehend. And they seemed to be watching me, waiting for me to do something that would change everything, or perhaps cement my fate forever. I had tried, of course, to leave. The first few times, I thought it was just a bad dream. The door had been locked, the windows barred, and yet, when I attempted to find my way out, the house seemed to fold into itself, turning every corner into another hallway, every door into a dead end. I would step into one room and find myself back in the same space. The same cold, oppressive air. As if the house was playing some cruel game, the girl's presence lingered in every part of the mansion, as if she were tied to it, tied to me. She was everywhere, her eyes always following me, her voice always just a whisper away, calling me back to the mirror. And I couldn't resist. Every time I passed the reflection of my own face, it was as if I was drawn to it, compelled to look. Each time, the girl's form would appear, staring at me with those cold, empty eyes. "You can't leave," she would whisper. "You belong here now." And for a long time, I thought she was wrong. I thought I could somehow escape, find my way back to the world I knew. But with each passing moment, I realized that I was wrong. I was the one who had become part of the house. The girl wasn't just haunting me. She was the house, just as I was becoming it. The mansion had claimed me, and I could feel it in my bones, in the pulse of the walls, the beat of the house's heart. It was a living thing, and I was part of it now. One night, as the air in the mansion grew unbearably thick with the weight of unspoken words, I found myself standing in front of the same mirror. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the house's pulse vibrating beneath the floorboards. I could feel it in the air, the weight of everything I had tried to escape. The whispers rose in volume, mingling with the low hum of the mansion itself. I took a deep breath and looked into the mirror. At first, I saw only my own reflection. But then, just as it had happened countless times before, her image began to emerge, slowly fading into view. The girl's pale face appeared in the glass, her empty eyes staring into mine. She wasn't a ghost. She was something else. She was the mansion, a part of it, a piece of the darkness that had consumed me. "You can't escape," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with that same chilling certainty. "You've already become a part of it, just like I did." I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest, but my legs refused to move. The house, the girl, everything around me, it was all one now. There was no dividing line between me and this place. It had woven itself into my very soul. "You never left," she continued. "You've always been here. And now, you always will be." The weight of her words sank deep into my chest. I had come here searching for an escape, But there was no escape. The mansion wasn't just a place, it was a part of me. And I was a part of it. I turned away from the mirror. But the house wouldn't let me go. The walls seemed to close in around me, pressing me forward until I was standing in the center of a room I didn't recognize. The air was thick with the scent of decay. The walls covered in mildew and cracks. The house was dying, but it was alive. Its pulse quickening, beating faster, as if it were aware of my presence. I could hear her again. The girl's voice calling out to me, urging me to come closer. "You're part of me now," she said, her voice filling the room. "You will never leave." I wanted to scream, to beg for release, but I couldn't. The mansion had claimed me, body and soul, and I was its prisoner. There was no escaping it. The walls around me seemed to shift and pulse, and I could feel the mansion's hunger, its insatiable need to consume. It wasn't a house. It wasn't even a place anymore. It was a living, breathing entity, and I was trapped inside it. "You belong to me," the girl whispered, her voice cold and final, "just as I belong to the house. And now, we are one." As I stood there, surrounded by the mansion's suffocating presence, I realized the truth. I had never truly left. The house was inside me now, just as I was inside it. There was no escape. There was no freedom. The mansion had claimed me, and I would never be free. "You are mine," the girl whispered again, her voice fading into the walls, into the very air around me. And with that, I understood. This was my fate, to be consumed by the mansion, to become a part of it, to wander its endless halls forever. And as the darkness of the house closed in around me, I knew that I would never leave. I was home now. I wandered through the mansion's halls, each step feeling heavier than the last. The walls, once so grand and full of life, had become nothing more than a shell of their former selves. They creaked and groaned under the weight of years. But they were alive in a way that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. The mansion wasn't just a building anymore. It was a presence, a force, a living thing that had consumed me. It had been like this for days. Weeks' time had lost its meaning. Every corner I turned led me back to the same place, the same reflection, the same girl in the mirror. She was always there, watching me, waiting for me. Her cold, empty eyes followed me everywhere I went, and I could feel her presence growing stronger, pulling me deeper into the mansion's web. The house itself was alive, breathing with a rhythm that matched my own heartbeats. Its walls seemed to pulse, the shadows shifting and moving as if they had a life of their own. The air was thick, heavy with a sense of something ancient, something dark, and I couldn't escape it. I had tried. I had tried to leave. I'd found the door, tried to open it. But every time I touched the knob, the house would shift, the door vanishing into the wall as if it had never existed. I had tried every window, every passage, but the mansion wouldn't let me go. It had swallowed me whole, and now I was a part of it just as it was a part of me. "You can't leave," the girl whispered to me, her voice a constant, hollow echo in my mind. "You're mine now. You belong to me." I had heard those words so many times that they no longer startled me. They had become a truth, a certainty that pressed down on me like the very walls of the house. The girl wasn't just a ghost. She was the mansion. She was the heart of it, the soul that kept it alive. And I had become a part of her, a part of the darkness that consumed everything in its path. As I walked down the corridor, the house seemed to shift around me. The walls closed in, narrowing the space, suffocating me with their presence. I could hear the whispers again, soft at first, distant, but growing louder with each step I took. They filled the air, swirling around me like smoke. The voices of those who had come before me, their cries for help, their pleas for release, merged with the girl's voice until they became one. A chorus of sorrow and regret. "You belong here," she whispered, her voice now all around me, in my ears, in my mind. "This is where you belong. Forever." I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. I wanted to break free. But there was no fighting it. There was no escaping it. The mansion had claimed me. I had become part of it, just as it had become a part of me. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the house pulsed with life, with hunger. The walls pressed in on me, suffocating me with their weight. The mirror was ahead, gleaming in the dim light. I had come to expect it, to expect her. But this time, as I stood before the glass, I didn't see just her. I saw myself, my reflection, but it wasn't me. It was her. It was the girl. And she was smiling at me, her hollow eyes gleaming with something I couldn't understand. "You're here," she whispered, her voice low, almost playful. "You've always been here." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in the reflection. The girl reached out, her hand pressing against the glass. Her cold fingers were a shock, a jolt of ice that went straight to my heart. I felt her touch in my chest, in my soul. She was inside me now, and I was inside her. We were one, bound together by the house, by the darkness that lived in every inch of it. "You can't leave," she whispered again. "You never left. You belong to me now." The reflection in the mirror seemed to shift, to melt. And suddenly, I wasn't looking at myself at all. I was looking at the mansion, at the decaying walls, the crumbling floors, the broken windows. The house was alive, and I was part of it. I reached out to touch the glass, my fingers trembling. But as soon as I did, the mirror rippled, warping like water. I felt a sharp pull, a tug at my soul, as if the mansion were calling me, pulling me deeper into its core. The walls seemed to stretch, the darkness swallowing everything in its path. The girl's smile widened, and I could hear the whispers growing louder, more insistent. They were voices soft at first, but now rising in volume, each voice joining the others in a chorus of despair. "You're one of us now," the girl whispered, her voice mingling with the others. "You'll never leave." I wanted to scream, to fight against the pull, but it was no use. The house had already taken me. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the air around me thickened, in the way the very walls seemed to breathe with my every movement. The mansion was alive, and I was a part of it. "You're home now," the girl said, her voice soft but final. This is where you belong. You will never leave. And as the darkness closed in, as the walls shifted and pulsed with life, I realized there was no escape. There never had been. The house had claimed me, and now I would wander its halls forever. A prisoner of the mansion and its unyielding hunger. I was home, and I would never leave. I couldn't tell how long it had been since I first stepped foot into the mansion. Time didn't work here the way it did in the world outside. Days felt like seconds, and seconds felt like hours. It was as though the mansion had its own rhythm, its own heartbeat, and I was just a small part of it, caught in its endless cycle. There was no escape, no way out. It was as if the house had taken control, consuming everything, and leaving nothing behind but shadows and whispers. I had lost myself in it, lost the person I had once been, the one who had walked through the door with hope, with curiosity. That person was gone now, swallowed up by the house, by the girl who haunted its halls. She was never far from me, always watching, always waiting, and I was always drawn to her, to the cold, empty eyes that reflected my own fears, my own darkness. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice filling the silence of the mansion, echoing off the walls. "You belong here now. You are part of me." I had come to understand that there was no escape. The house wasn't just a building. It wasn't just a place. It was alive. The walls breathed, the floors creaked, and the very air felt thick with the weight of something ancient, something powerful. And it wasn't just the house that had changed me. The mansion, in its strange, twisted way, had become a part of me. The darkness, the whispers, the girl, they were now in my mind, in my very soul. Every time I looked into the mirror, I saw her reflection, her cold, empty eyes staring back at me. And now, when I looked at myself, I didn't see who I once was. I saw the girl. I saw the mansion. I saw the darkness that had consumed me, that had made me a part of it. "You're one of us now," she whispered again, her voice soft, almost comforting, as though she were reassuring me that this was where I belonged. "You will never leave. You will never be free." Her words echoed in my mind, and I knew she was right. I was trapped. The house had claimed me, just as it had claimed so many others before me. And now, I was just another lost soul, wandering its endless halls, forever bound to it. There was no escape. The walls of the mansion seemed to close in around me, the air growing thick with the weight of its hunger. It wasn't just the house that had changed me. It was the girl, too. She had become a part of me, just as I had become a part of her. Her voice, her presence, it was always with me now, filling every empty space, echoing in my thoughts, in my heart. I had become the mansion. I had become the girl. We were one. The reflection in the mirror shifted again, and I saw myself, only it wasn't really me. It was the girl. Her pale face, her hollow eyes, her twisted smile. It was all I saw now. And I knew, deep down, that I had lost myself, that I had become just another ghost in the mansion, trapped in its never-ending cycle. "You're home now," she whispered, her voice soft, almost like a lullaby, but with a chilling finality. "You will never leave." You belong to me. I turned away from the mirror. But the girl's presence lingered. She was inside me now. In every step I took. In every breath I drew. The mansion, too, was inside me, its walls, its darkness, its hunger. I could feel it pulsing through me, consuming me. I wanted to scream, to fight against it. But I knew it was useless. The house had claimed me, and there was no escaping it. No way out. I wandered the halls of the mansion, my footsteps heavy, my mind numb. The walls seemed to shift, to move with me, as if they were alive, watching, waiting. The whispers grew louder, the voices of the house, of the souls who had been trapped, here before me. They called to me, their cries echoing in the darkness. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was one of them now. The girl was always with me, always just behind me, her cold eyes fixed on mine. I could feel her presence in every corner of the mansion, in every shadow that lingered in the corners of the rooms. She was the house, and the house was her. We were all part of the same darkness. "You'll never leave," she whispered again, her voice soft, soothing, like a promise. You belong to me now, and I knew, deep down, that I would never leave. I would wander these halls forever, a prisoner of the mansion, a prisoner of the girl. I was home now, and I would never escape. The mansion had become my world. I could feel its pulse beneath my feet, the steady thrum of life of darkness coursing through its decaying walls. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was alive, a sentient being that had consumed me, just as it had consumed all who had entered before me. I had become part of it. I had lost myself in the endless corridors, the endless rooms. I no longer knew where I ended and the mansion began. Every step I took was a reminder that I was no longer free. The house, with its shifting walls and whispering shadows, had claimed me. I had tried to resist, tried to fight against it, but it was no use. The mansion had woven itself into my soul, its darkness a part of me now, just as I was a part of it. The girl, she was not just a spirit or a ghost anymore. She was the mansion, and I was her. "You belong here now," she whispered, her voice soft and cold, a melody that echoed through the very walls of the house. "You are mine." Her words weren't just spoken. They were felt, deep within me, a certainty that wrapped itself around my heart like chains. There was no escaping it. I had become one with the mansion, just as it had become one with me. I walked down the familiar hallway, my steps echoing in the silence. The portraits on the wall stared down at me, their eyes hollow and lifeless, yet somehow full of knowing. I could feel their gaze, just as I could feel the presence of the mansion itself, watching me, waiting for me to understand that I was trapped, that there was no way out. I reached the mirror, the one that had been a gateway to the girl, to the house. My reflection was there, but it wasn't mine. It was the girl's face, her hollow eyes staring back at me, her twisted smile stretched across her pale face. She wasn't just a ghost anymore. She was part of me. We were one. "You never left," she whispered softly. "You are here with me. Forever." The words wrapped themselves around my mind, sinking deeper into my soul. I tried to pull away, to look away from the reflection, but I couldn't. It was like I was trapped in the glass, in the mirror, bound to the girl and to the mansion. I could feel the house in my bones, its walls pressing in on me, its darkness seeping into my very soul. "You are mine," she whispered again, her voice so soft, yet so final. "You belong to this place. You are part of it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight, to escape, to run. But there was no escape. The mansion had claimed me, body and soul. I had become one with it. And there was no leaving, no going back. The house, the girl, the whispers, they were all a part of me now. I had become a prisoner of this place, lost in its endless maze of rooms and shadows. The walls seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with their weight. The house had swallowed me whole, and now I was nothing more than a shadow, trapped in its endless darkness. I could hear the whispers of the others, the ones who had come before me, their voices rising up from the walls, from the floor, from every corner of the house. They were all trapped here, just as I was. "You'll never leave." The girl's voice echoed in my mind, wrapping around me like a shroud. "This is your home now. You belong here." I wanted to run, to escape, but there was no place left to go. The mansion had consumed everything, and now it had consumed me. There was nothing left but darkness, and the girl who had become one with the house. "You are mine," she whispered again, her voice soft but filled with an eerie finality. "And you will never leave." I stood there, in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection of the girl. She wasn't just a ghost anymore. She was me. She was the mansion. She was everything. And I had become her. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with the voices of the lost souls who had been trapped here before me. They were all part of the house now, part of the endless cycle of darkness and despair. There was no escape. There never had been. The mansion had claimed us all, and we were part of it now. "You're home," the girl whispered, her voice fading into the darkness. "You'll never leave." And in that moment, I understood the truth. The mansion had won. It had consumed me. And now I was a part of it. I was trapped, lost in its endless halls, forever bound to its darkness. The mansion had claimed me, and I would never leave. The mansion felt like it was swallowing me whole. Each room, each hallway, seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, pulling me deeper into its heart. I walked, but it felt as if the very air around me was closing in, as if the walls themselves were leaning closer, trapping me in their dark embrace. I could feel it in my bones, the mansion's pulse, its constant thrum of life, like the beating of a heart beneath the floorboards. It wasn't just the house that had changed me. It was its spirit. The house had become a part of me, and I had become part of it. At first, I had resisted. I fought against the house, against the girl, against the pull of the darkness that surrounded me. But now, every attempt to break free felt more futile than the last. The house had consumed me, body and soul, and now there was no escape. The girl was always with me, always watching, her eyes cold and empty, her smile twisted with satisfaction as she whispered her cruel truths in my ear. "You are mine now," she would whisper softly, her voice like a snake coiling around my thoughts. "You will never leave." Her words had become my truth. I could feel them in my bones, in the very marrow of my being. The mansion had claimed me, and I had become a part of it. There was no dividing line between me and the house anymore. I could feel the walls, the floors, the very air itself pulsing with life, with darkness, and I was one with it. I was home, and there was no leaving. The walls themselves had begun to speak to me in whispers. The voices were faint at first, distant murmurs that I could ignore. But as time wore on, they grew louder, clearer, as though the house itself was alive with the memories of all those who had come before me. The forgotten souls, trapped within the mansion's dark embrace, called to me, their voices weaving into a chorus of sorrow and despair. "You'll never leave," they would cry out, their voices mingling with the girls', their echoes filling the empty spaces of my mind. We are all part of it now. I could feel them, these lost souls. I could feel their cold hands brushing against my skin as I walked, their presence heavy on my chest, suffocating me with their weight. They had all been claimed by the mansion, just as I had been, lost within its endless corridors, forever wandering the halls, trapped in the house's grip. It wasn't just the whispers that haunted me. It was the house itself. The very air around me seemed to press in, thick with the weight of forgotten memories, with the sorrow of the souls that had been consumed by the house long before I had come. The walls were alive, breathing with a life that had been built from the fear and regret of those who had come here seeking something freedom, peace, escape, and had instead found only darkness. The house fed on that darkness, on their regret, on their fear, and now it was feeding on me. I reached another door, one I had never seen before. The handle was cold under my hand, as though it had been untouched for centuries. The door creaked open with a groan, and I stepped inside. The room was different from the others. It wasn't decaying. It wasn't covered in dust and mildew. It was clean, almost pristine, as if it had been waiting for me. And in the center of the room stood a mirror. The girl's reflection appeared in the glass, her eyes cold and knowing. She had been waiting for me. She always had. And as I stared into her reflection, I knew that I had become a part of her, a part of the mansion. I was no longer just a person. I was a ghost, a shadow, wandering through the endless halls, forever trapped in the mansion's dark embrace. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice sweet and final, like a lullaby sung in the dark. "You belong here, with me. You're home now." Her smile widened, and the room around me seemed to grow darker, the air colder. I could feel the mansion pressing in on me, could feel its pulse vibrating beneath my skin, its hunger growing stronger as it fed on my fear. The girl stepped closer in the reflection, her pale face twisted with a sadistic smile. And I realized the awful truth. I wasn't just a prisoner of the mansion. I was part of it. I had become the house, and the house had become me. There was no escaping it. There was no breaking free. The mansion had claimed me, body and soul, just as it had claimed so many others before me. The girl was not a spirit, not a ghost. She was the house, and now I was her. The walls seemed to stretch, the room growing larger and larger, as though the mansion itself was swallowing me whole. The whispers of the lost souls echoed in my ears, their voices rising in a chorus of sorrow, of regret. They had become part of the house, just as I had. They were trapped in the mansion, just as I was. And now, I would never leave. I would never escape. "You're home now," the girl whispered, her voice now a part of the very air around me. A soft, gentle melody that filled my mind. "You will never leave. You are mine. Forever." I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I couldn't. The house had swallowed me whole, and I was lost within it. I had become one with the mansion, just as the mansion had become one with me. There was no escaping it. The mansion had claimed me, and I would never leave. The mansion had become more than just a place. It had become my entire world. I could feel it in the very air around me, the weight of its presence pressing down on me with every step I took. The walls seemed to shift and drone, as though the house itself were alive, watching, waiting. And I was a part of it now, inescapably woven into the dark fabric of its being. It had claimed me, body and soul, and there was no escaping its grasp. I had tried to fight it at first, to hold on to the faint memories of a life I had once known. I would look at the dust-covered windows and imagine the sun on my face, feel the warmth of daylight, hear the sound of laughter outside the mansion's walls. But those memories grew dimmer with each passing day. The mansion's pull was too strong, its presence too consuming. It filled the silence in the air, crowded my thoughts, and suffocated my hope. I had become a part of it. The mansion wasn't a place anymore. It was a living entity, and I was its prisoner. "You're mine," the girl's voice would echo in my mind. "You belong here. Forever." Her whispers weren't just words anymore. They were feelings, sensations, pulsing in the very air around me. The mansion itself seemed to hum in rhythm with her voice, its heartbeat in sync with my own. The house breathed with me. It lived with me. And I, tragically, had become one with it. I walked through the endless corridors, my footsteps now a part of the mansion's eternal hum. The walls creaked in time with my steps. The ceiling groaned above me, as if the house itself was reacting to my every movement. It was impossible to ignore. There was no escape, no refuge. Each door I opened, each hallway I followed, only led me deeper into its heart. Every room I entered looked the same, with cracked walls and faded portraits of long-dead ancestors whose eyes followed me, judging me. The portraits seemed to shift in the shadows. The eyes, always just a bit too intense, too knowing. It wasn't just the house that was alive. It was the voices that filled the space. The voices of the lost souls who had come before me. The house had claimed them, just as it had claimed me. Their whispers echoed through the walls, rising and falling like the wind. Some were soft, faint, like distant memories. Others were urgent, pleading for release, crying out for salvation. But their cries were hollow, lost in the oppressive silence of the mansion, swallowed by the girl's cold, reassuring whispers. "You'll never leave," she would say, her voice always lingering in my thoughts. "This is where you belong, with me." Her voice was a comforting lullaby now, soothing in its finality. There was no anger in it, no malice, just an inevitability. A sense of acceptance that pressed down on me like the weight of the mansion itself. I no longer fought against it. I had stopped trying to escape. The house had already consumed me. And now, I was just another part of its endless darkness. The girl wasn't just a spirit. She was the mansion itself, its heart, its soul. She had become one with the house, and now I was bound to her. I came to another room, the door standing ajar. It was dark, but something inside called to me. I stepped forward, my feet heavy, and entered. This room was different. It wasn't decaying or covered in dust like the rest. It was pristine, almost impossibly so, as if it had been waiting for me. The walls were lined with bookshelves, the shelves full of tattered books, their pages yellowed with age. But it wasn't the books that caught my attention. It was the mirror, the large ornate mirror at the far end of the room, its surface gleaming in the dim light. I had seen this mirror before, many times. It was the same mirror where the girl first appeared, her pale face a twisted reflection in the glass. I had always known that she was a part of the house, but now I understood. She wasn't just a ghost, a spirit bound to this place. She was the mansion's keeper, its soul. And now, she had claimed me, just as she had claimed so many before me. I stepped closer to the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. The air grew colder as I reached out, my fingers trembling as I touched the glass. The surface rippled under my touch. And for a moment, everything around me seemed to fade, the room dissolving into a shadow of itself. Then, the girl appeared, her cold eyes staring back at me from the glass. She smiled, that twisted, cruel smile, as though she knew the truth before I did. "You can never leave," she whispered, her voice filling my mind, drowning out everything else. "You belong here. You are part of me now." I wanted to pull away, to run, but I couldn't. Her presence enveloped me, suffocating me, until I felt as though I were trapped inside the glass itself, a part of the reflection, a part of the mansion. The walls seemed to pulse around me, and the air grew thick with her presence. I was becoming her, becoming the house, and there was no way back. The mansion had claimed me, and now I would wander its halls forever, a prisoner in its dark embrace. "You're home now," the girl whispered, her voice soft and final. "This is where you belong." And I knew, in that moment, that there was no escape. I would never leave the mansion. I had become part of it, and it had become part of me. The mansion had become my reality, and I was no longer the person I had been before I entered its decaying walls. Time had lost its meaning, and with each passing moment, the mansion's grip on me grew tighter. I could feel it, the darkness that pulsed beneath the floors, the cold breath of the walls that whispered my name. It wasn't just the house. It had become a part of me, woven into my very soul. There was no escape. There never had been. I no longer tried to fight it. There was no point. The mansion had claimed me, just as it had claimed all those who had walked through its doors before me. The house wasn't just a place. It was alive. The dark corners of every room seemed to reach out to me, pulling me deeper into its endless corridors. The girl who had been haunting my every step, wasn't just a spirit anymore. She was the mansion, the house, the keeper of its soul. And now I was part of it. I was part of her. "You'll never leave," she whispered softly, her voice an echo that filled the empty halls. "You're mine now. You belong to the house. Forever." Her words no longer terrified me. They had become a comforting truth, a soothing lullaby that filled the emptiness inside me. The mansion had taken everything: my freedom, my life, my soul, and now it had become everything I was. The walls, the mirrors, the dark hallways, they all felt like home now. There was no escaping. I was home. I stood in front of the mirror once more, my reflection staring back at me. It wasn't my face anymore. It was hers. My eyes were cold, empty, just like hers. I smiled, and the smile wasn't mine. It was hers. It was the mansion's smile. "You are home now," she whispered, her voice filling every part of me, comforting me with her cold, unfeeling embrace. "You will never leave. You belong to me." The truth settled within me like a weight I could no longer ignore. The mansion had claimed me, and now I was a part of it. I had become its shadow, its soul, its keeper, and I would wander these halls forever, just as those who had come before me had done, trapped in the endless cycle of darkness. There was no escape, but in that truth, there was a strange comfort. The house had taken me, and I had become a part of it. I no longer feared the girl. I no longer feared the house. The darkness wasn't something to run from. It was my home now, and I would never leave. The house settled into a deeper stillness, as though it were exhaling a long-held breath. The shadows that had once been oppressive now seemed softer, more familiar, as though they were no longer lurking but waiting, gently folding themselves into the corners of each room. The air had grown thicker, yet in a peaceful way, like a comforting embrace rather than a suffocating weight. The mansion no longer seemed to loom over me in a menacing way. It had become something I had come to understand as part of my very existence. I walked slowly through the halls now, my movements no longer filled with dread, but rather with an acceptance of my new reality. The grand, yet decaying, staircase stood before me like an old friend, its steps creaking with my weight, but welcoming nonetheless. Every familiar creak, every whisper from the walls now seemed to blend in with my own thoughts, like a soft lullaby that had been playing in the background for so long I hadn't noticed it. The coldness I once feared was now a comfort, wrapping me in its dark, eternal embrace. The mansion's pulse was steady, like the heartbeat of a long-forgotten entity finally at peace. The walls no longer felt oppressive. They felt like the embrace of a home that had patiently waited for me to understand its rhythm, its nature. The girl's voice still echoed, but it no longer filled me with fear. She wasn't just a spirit. She was the mansion itself. And we were one in this moment. As I moved deeper into the house, the whispers faded into the background. There was no more frantic searching, no more yearning to escape. I had found my place here, In the mansion's cold, quiet halls, the darkness no longer threatened.